Sam, and I'm making this video about the upcoming solar eclipse on March 20th. It's going to happen in the sign of Pisces, and it's going to implicate the Sun, Moon, South Node, and Mars. They're all in Pisces, and we're going to have the eclipse. Now, when we have the eclipse, it's when the orbits of the Sun, Moon, and Earth all line up in the same plane of three-dimensional space, and it happens on the lunation cycles, the full moon and the new moon. And so on the new moon, when the Sun and Moon join the node, we have a solar eclipse, and then 30 days later, we'll have the lunar eclipse. Sometimes the lunar eclipse comes before the solar eclipse in the cycle, but we have the solar eclipse in Pisces with the Sun, Moon, and also Mars joining the South Node. Now, the South Node eclipses are about ending some sort of deep habitual patterning, explosive habitual patterning and wiring. It can unleash a lot of buried wisdom because we have a lot of kind of tangled up energy around K2. It's actually quite related to our childhood. Of course, people also say past lives, but past lives is a lazy astrology tactic because we can't verify past lives. Our childhood and our early life is basically our past lives given in a very sort of condensed form, because these aren't things that we've chosen. We just incarnate with a certain situation. And it gives us a lot of deeply embedded, patterns, habits, and skills. We all have enormous skill where the South Node is, but we have a hard time accessing that skill because it also brings out a lot of pain. Because a lot of the sort of transformation and separation from spirit to the ego required that we learn how to get mastery over something because of what we had to deal with as a child, for instance. And so we have this mastery at certain things, but when we have to use that or when we see that thing, it also brings up a kind of repulsion and a revulsion and a kind of familiar disgust and even a familiar kind of explosive anger. So we all have a relationship with the South Node around those kind of themes. And when the Sun is eclipsed, the solar eclipse is really the one that starts the cycle, because the lunar eclipse, just like the new moon, just like the full moon, is a halfway point in the cycle. So the solar eclipse is what really kind of lights the fuse, and we're kind of dealing with those implications for the next, maybe 6 months or so until the next solar eclipse. So this solar eclipse is going to be in Pisces, and in general, solar eclipses tend to ignite and kind of blow something up, and then the lunar and then the lunar eclipse tends to show where we sort of try to gather that thing together a little bit more. In this case, it's very pronounced because we're going to have the solar eclipse in Pisces, which is already about dispersion and diffusion of form, actually, into the sort of cosmic, into the metaphysical, and into the abstract. But also Mars is there, which is a very explosive force. So there's been a lot of explosive reckonings and awakenings the last couple weeks. Really started when Venus and Mars all kind of got really close to each other, and also to K2, and then Mars crossed K2. Now we're going to have an eclipse there, and it's going to really concentrate all this energy around Pisces themes, which is about, again, expanding into that which is beyond just our paradigm of body, mind, that sort of matrix that we're living in. That's on a very sort of, like I say, cosmic level. It really has a lot of potential for us to elevate to a higher consciousness. And again, that's very abstract. Those kinds of things sound like, well, what does that mean to my life? Often we experience it in things like creativity and, literally a connection to that part of us that is not just of this world. So if you do any kind of meditation practices and all of those sorts of things, there's enormous grace. And again, it's blowing up some idea of form, or literally even blowing up the idea that you are a form. And it's trying to connect you to something deeper and more universal. You're a universal being. You have this illusion. Here come the cops. The universal cops are coming for us because we're not acting like a universal being. So you're a universal being, and you have this illusion that you have control and that you're really doing this thing at this time, and this is really who you are. And it's all, on the deepest level, it's an illusion. It comes and goes, it rises and falls. And this eclipse in Pisces is trying to blow that apart. And Ketu, which is eclipsing the sun, is a very spiritualizing force, probably the most spiritualizing in the whole chart, because it wants to turn away from the world and all the hard work of the world. We just have this feeling that we are tired of working on things. Whatever has your, especially what has your emotions arrested, or these big goals and ambitions that you have to do something, it just, now you feel like, oh, I don't feel like working on that right now. I just feel like rejecting it and finding that thing that's eternal. But this is the thing, most people don't really know how to connect to the eternal very well. So we connect to the ephemeral. And Pisces becomes something that's an escapism. So rather than escaping into the self, we escape from the self into something that's escapist, like alcohol, drugs, or in this world, things like watching a lot of movies and watching TV and becoming unconscious, because the pain of life and the pressure and the details we need to manage in order to live, we want to just escape from. And by the way, those details we need to manage to live is the opposite sign of Pisces, which is Virgo. And that's where we're going to have the solar eclipse in a couple weeks. So one thing you can understand is this eclipse in Pisces is sort of blowing open a certain part of ourself that can really give us access to like this deeper sort of diamond underneath. It's kind of like blowing open, 2 feet of granite in order to get to this beautiful diamond inside. But again, if we identify ourselves with the 2 feet of granite, we've built this life, this paradigm of life that says, I'm this impermeable fortress and I know what's right and I know how things are supposed to work. If that's our trip, we're having some real problem right now. Or wherever we're having that trip, wherever we have this trip that, you know what, I got this thing figured out. I'm right about this. This is really the way it is. Wherever you're running that game, it feels like there's a jackhammer right there, right on it now. Doesn't it? And so Pisces is this eclipse. The main reason it feels so explosive is because Mars is also there. So Mars has been going over Ketu, throwing bombs, like setting off like sticks of dynamite in those calcified biases you have about how you really know how things are, and you really know that you're right and everybody else is doing it wrong, or whatever version of it is. It's some version of that usually. It's getting really blown up and a lot of frustrations, and it depends on what sign it is. I can go by elements though and say fire signs are seeing this in the Moksha trine, which is liberating trine, which is to, let go of the self. Earth signs are feeling it in the Arcta trine, which is the desires. The Kama trine, desires. The things that you want. For the Earth signs, which are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, you're feeling your desires and how you can't hold them. They're getting like blown up, and you have to let go of some of your desires. Air signs feel it in the Arcta trine, which houses 2, 6, and 10, which are wealth, values, self-respect, the things we're trying to do as a result, our career, the effort we need to put forth to manifest things, Arcta. And then water signs are feeling it in the Dharma trine, so it's very dharmic for them. Water signs are always ready to kind of move through an emotional, paradigm where even if it's uncertain, as long as they're feeling a connection, it feels good, it feels real. Water signs have a problem when they're disconnected from some kind of feeling, so they try to get some kind of feeling going, because then that feels like them. Well, now all this explosions around all these Pisces things, which is all this feeling, is connecting them to something that's familiar. So in addition to having that eclipse in Pisces, it's also in the Nakshatra of Uttara Bhadrapada, which is the Nakshatra of service. It's ruled by a god called Ajya Ekapada. Oh, sorry, I do it. Ahibunya, sorry. Ahibunya. Ajya Ekapada is Purva Bhadrapada. So it's called Ahibunya. And it's called the celestial serpent, and also like the serpent of the deep. So this is the nakshatra where, after Purva Bhadrapada, which gives us this expansive kind of lightning strike of truth, this glimpse of truth into who we really are, Uttara Bhadrapada is where we drill down deeply into what that glimpse is all about. Because we can have a glimpse of the divine, and that just shows us what's really going on. That just shows us that we're not this physical creature, that we're capable of much more. But it's just a glimpse in Purva Bhadra, like a lightning strike. Ahirbunya is where we, or Uttara Bhadrapada, Ahirbunya, who is the deity, is the one, it goes deeply down into those holes in our psyche and extracts like the poison from it and heals it. So Uttara Bhadrapada is the nakshatra of this eclipse, and again has enormous capacity to go down deeply into the truth of your emanation, of your incarnation, in a truthful sense. And things that are less cosmic and mysterious, it's a great time to really connect with community, culture, things that, culture in the sense of, higher, especially if it revolves around higher teachings. It's a good time to really go into your teachings and really connect with those things that inspire you on the deepest level, and see yourself as a, as both a representative of those teachings to others and also as a student. Now these things are mirrored, especially by the movement of Jupiter, who is aspecting the sign of Pisces from Cancer. He's been retrograde, and he continues to go retrograde. He started retrograde December of last year. And Saturn also just turned retrograde, so it's a time to really go inward and deeply commit to extracting the nectar from what could be sort of a poisonous quality. So anything that's related to serpents have to do with transforming that poison into nectar. Just like a serpent's venom is also very potent, healing medicine. So, again, Saturn is also related to the nakshatra Uttara Bhadrapada, and has that quality of Saturn of determined effort, determination to not give up the fight, even though it's difficult, even though it's confusing. So there's a lot of confusion in Pisces because our paradigm is reshifted, and we try to hold on to something, and Pisces is like two fish swimming. You try to grab one, the other one gets away. You can't hold both. And so it's like having to manage this emotional duality. That's what Pisces is. It's emotional duality. And the emotions are very dual anyway, but again, when we're trying to hold a solid identity and trying to maintain some fixed capacity, what happens when you take something that's fixed and solid and you put it in water? Water just dissolves it, it crumbles. And so remember that, it's very important, but also realize that we have a very important solar eclipse that's coming in a couple weeks in Virgo, which is to try to reorganize the dispersion of Pisces. So like with every lunar cycle, with every solar conjunction of the sun and moon, every new moon is the initiation of a cycle, and the initiation of the Pisces cycle is always this kind of rebirth. With an eclipse there, it also brings up a lot of things, and of course this is why you have the nodes going through a different axis for a year and a half. It really touches off this sort of subconscious need to handle that thing, or the need to handle that thing on a subconscious level, and then the eclipses really show that. So opposite again, that Pisces is Virgo, full moon in a couple weeks, where we're going to try to reorganize the kind of shards of the old that are getting blown open right now, because it might feel like parts of your life are getting scattered everywhere. And so there'll be more pressure to try to reorganize those things, and you'll probably feel a little more harmonious and in control and willing to, and actually needing to, reorganize and rework some of the feeling of ungroundedness and uncertainty in a couple weeks when we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo, join Rahu, which is opposite that dispersed, exploded Pisces eclipse. So it really, again, calls into contrast these signs. Pisces, which is about really surrendering from all the details and work of the world, and Virgo, which is about organizing and maintaining all of the details of the world. So this is a very important eclipse and time and lunation cycle. So if you want to hear more about how this influences your sign, and you're not a member of my website, of my member site, then you can hear that for a penny, and also get 2 weeks of forecast before you decide whether or not you want to be a permanent member. You also get classes, and you get a whole bunch of things. When you register for just 1 penny, there's a link here for you to click to do that. I recommend you do it. I have people who have been members for 3-4 years, as long as I've done it, to stay on top of the daily astrology. And also, in particular, when we have these important cycles touch off, it's very important to know how it's going to influence your sign. And so I hope, if that's something you want, that you also take me up on that. So stay cool, stay fluid, be like 2 fish, like a great kind of Zen master. It takes a lot of dexterity and humor and flexibility and devotion to swim in these waters. So I hope it's going well for you. Be in touch.